When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Viktor Frankl. Have you ever wondered why the relationships we have with our mothers leave such a deep impact on our lives? Do you feel like certain emotional wounds from your childhood just won't heal, no matter how hard you try? What if I told you that healing from these wounds begins with understanding the hidden truths about your past? Hi there, and welcome back to Son.Mindfulness. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Have you ever thought about how the silent pain we carry from our childhood can shape our lives as adults? How often do we overlook the emotional baggage that continues to affect our relationships, our happiness, and even our well-being? This is something that many of us struggle with, but the good news is, there is a way to heal. By uncovering the hidden truths, practicing self-love, and understanding the wounds we've inherited, we can start to break the cycle and move forward. Here at Son.Mindfulness, we believe in helping you explore deep emotional truths and guiding you on a path to healing and peace. Our channel is dedicated to offering practical tools and mindful practices that you can use every day to improve your emotional health and well-being. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and join us on this journey. Your support means a lot, and we'd love to have you as part of our community. Now, as we dive deeper into today's topic, think about this. What if understanding your past, your mother's story, her pain, could be the key to freeing yourself from emotional burdens? What if you could break free from the chains of generational pain and start healing today? Stay with us until the end of this video, because we'll guide you through actionable steps that can make a real difference in your life. Ready to begin? Let's explore the truths that can help you heal and move forward. Part 2. Silent pain and repressed emotions. Unspoken pain. Have you ever felt a heaviness in your chest? An ache that you can't explain, but it's always there? It lingers silently, even when everything around you appears normal. It's not something you can easily put into words, but you feel it, deep inside, as if it's embedded in the very core of your being. This pain is often connected to something that many of us are reluctant to face, the relationship with our mother. You may wonder, why does this pain endure for so long? It lingers because it's not a pain of the body, it's emotional. And emotions, especially those tied to the ones we love most, are often buried deep within us. Even when we grow older, even when we become parents ourselves, the emotional connection to our mother can affect us in ways we don't fully understand. Have you ever felt like you weren't truly seen or heard by your mother? Or perhaps there was a lack of affection or validation when you needed it the most. You may have learned to hide your hurt behind a smile or a mask of success. But the ache doesn't go away. It follows you like a shadow, appearing when you least expect it. Many of us learn to live with it, pushing it aside because it's too painful to confront. But the pain never really leaves. It simply becomes a part of who we are, and without understanding, it continues to shape our actions and thoughts, often without us realizing it. This type of pain is not always visible to others. It's silent, it's subtle. It hides behind appearances. People may look at you and think you have it all together, but deep down you may be carrying this silent ache that affects everything you do. The poet Rumi once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But how can the light enter when the wound remains hidden, unacknowledged? When we avoid addressing these silent pains, they fester, and they influence how we relate to others, how we perceive ourselves, and how we navigate the world. Unhealed wounds. Have you ever wondered why some wounds from childhood seem to never heal? Why do certain emotions, anger, sadness, shame, persist in your life long after you've grown up? Emotional wounds from childhood are often left unaddressed, buried under years of silence. As children, we don't always have the language or the capacity to express our pain. When something happens, Whether it's neglect, harsh words, or the absence of love, we may not fully understand it at the time. But the impact is there, deep inside. Think back to your childhood. Were there moments when your needs went unmet? When you silently cried out for love or understanding, but didn't receive it? Perhaps your mother, too, was carrying her own burdens, her own wounds that prevented her from offering the care you needed. This is where the real challenge lies. As children, we absorb everything. We take on our parents' emotions, their fears, their stresses, even when they don't directly express them. We internalize their moods, their silence, their unspoken struggles. And in doing so, we form beliefs about ourselves. We believe that maybe we weren't good enough to receive love. We believe that we are somehow unworthy. But the truth is, these wounds don't just disappear as we grow older. It's easy to think that time heals all wounds, but is that true? Time can only heal if we take the time to understand and address the wound. If left unexamined, these wounds deepen, leading to prolonged suffering. Emotional pain that isn't acknowledged or addressed can create patterns in our lives that affect our relationships, our sense of self-worth, and our ability to connect with others. The Zen teachings often remind us that enlightenment is not something we gain, but something we remember. Perhaps, to truly heal, we must first remember these wounds, not with judgment or blame, but with understanding. For example, let's look at the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. He was born into a life of luxury, but he was shielded from the harsh realities of life by his father. It wasn't until he ventured outside the palace walls that he encountered the suffering of the world. The pain, the sickness, the death, it was all so overwhelming that it changed the course of his life. He could no longer ignore the reality of human suffering. Just like Siddhartha, we must confront the unhealed wounds in our own lives. They may be tied to our mothers, to the way we were raised, to the messages we received, often unspoken, that shaped our sense of self. These wounds must be acknowledged, not as flaws in our mothers, but as part of the larger cycle of pain that we all experience. But why do we avoid confronting these wounds? Perhaps because facing them means we have to face the discomfort, the pain, and the emotions that we've pushed away for so long. It's easier to stay busy, to distract ourselves, or to blame others for our struggles. But healing requires us to sit with that discomfort. Healing requires us to face the pain, to understand where it came from, and to release its grip on us. Do you ever feel like you've been carrying this burden for far too long? Maybe it's time to stop and ask yourself, what are these wounds really telling me? By exploring the source of our unhealed wounds, we can begin to make peace with them. We can begin to break the cycle of pain that has been passed down, not just to us, but to our children, and perhaps even to future generations. A final reflection. As we move forward on this journey of healing, we must remember that these wounds are not ours alone. They are part of the story we inherited, and understanding them is key to finding peace. The Buddha's teachings remind us that nothing is permanent. Pain, too, is not permanent, but only if we choose to confront it with understanding and compassion. What would happen if we stopped hiding from our pain and allowed it to speak? What if we gave ourselves permission to feel the hurt, without shame, without guilt? Could this be the first step toward true healing? Next, we will delve deeper into the relationship with our mothers, uncovering the truth behind their actions and exploring how understanding their pain can help us release our own. This is the next step on our journey toward healing, the recognition that we are not defined by the wounds of the past. Let's move forward and explore recognizing the truth about your mother. Part 3. Recognizing the truth about your mother. Understanding the hidden story. Have you ever stopped to wonder about the deeper story behind your mother's actions? What if everything you thought you knew about her was only a small part of the truth? What if the way she acted, the way she loved, and the way she sometimes withdrew or became angry were all shaped by experiences you never knew about? We tend to see our mothers through the lens of our own experiences and expectations. We may see them as the caretakers, the providers of love, the ones who are always supposed to be there for us. But what if they too had their own struggles, wounds, and unspoken stories that shaped them in ways we don't understand? This is the first step in healing. Recognizing that your mother's actions were not solely about you. They were deeply influenced by her own life, her own past, and the emotional weight she carried. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered about the things your mother never shared with you? The things she kept hidden behind her silence, behind her seemingly strong facade. What was she carrying, deep within, that you never knew about? Could it be that her silence spoke louder than words? Take a moment to think about it. Imagine your mother as a young girl, facing her own struggles. Maybe with her own mother, maybe with the world around her. Can you see the shadows that may have shaped her? Can you begin to understand the weight she carried? The hidden roots of her behavior. To understand your mother, you must recognize that her behavior was not formed in isolation. She was shaped by her past, by the environment she grew up in, by the people who raised her. Before she became your mother, she was a daughter. Before she raised you, she was raised. Her story doesn't start when she gave birth to you. It began long before, in the invisible world of her childhood. Have you ever considered the possibility that your mother might have carried shame or unhealed trauma from her own childhood? Did she grow up in a home where her emotional needs were ignored or unmet? Was she ever shown the kind of love and care that she later tried to give you? These are questions worth asking, because they can unlock a deeper understanding of who she was and why she did the things she did. Zen teachings remind us that everything is interconnected. Nothing happens in isolation. Your mother's actions were not random. They were shaped by the invisible forces of her past. And to truly heal, you must learn to see her through the lens of empathy, not judgment. The story of the great warrior, General Patton, offers an example of this idea. Patton was known for his fierce leadership and unyielding strength. But beneath that exterior was a man who struggled with his own demons, who was often misunderstood by those around him. What many didn't know was that Patton's rigid behavior and aggressive style were shaped by his upbringing, his strict father, and his own internal struggles. Similarly, your mother's behavior was shaped by forces that may have been invisible to you. The love she gave, the love she withheld, everything was influenced by her own emotional history. And only by recognizing this can you begin to break free from the cycle of pain, breaking free from the lens of judgment. Now, let me ask you, how often do you judge your mother's actions, especially when you feel hurt or disappointed? How easy is it to blame her for not being the mother you needed? But the truth is, when you judge her, you are also holding yourself back from healing. What if, instead of blaming her, you chose to understand her? What if you could step outside of your own hurt and see her as a woman who had to navigate her own emotional battles, just as you do? This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior. It means recognizing that her actions were not always a reflection of who you were, but of what she experienced. In Zen, we often hear the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But there's more to it. After enlightenment, you see your mother's hands in every drop of water. In other words, once you understand your mother's true story, her past, and her struggles, you see her actions differently. You stop seeing her as a perfect figure, but as a human being with all the flaws and scars that make her who she is. And in that recognition, healing begins. Healing through compassion, not blame. To truly heal, you must choose compassion over blame. Compassion allows you to see your mother for who she really is, a woman who had her own wounds and limitations, just like everyone else. Blame keeps you stuck in a cycle of anger and resentment, preventing you from moving forward. In the Buddhist tradition, compassion is seen as one of the most powerful tools for healing. It doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior. It means choosing to understand the pain that led to that behavior. It means choosing to see the humanity in someone, even when they hurt you. Think about the story of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison. He was wronged in ways that most of us could never imagine. But when he was released, he didn't seek revenge. Instead, he chose forgiveness and compassion. He understood that the people who hurt him were also shaped by their own pain. He saw them not as enemies, but as fellow human beings. Can you do the same with your mother? Can you choose to see her through the lens of compassion, understanding that her actions were not always a reflection of who you were, but of what she had experienced? The journey of understanding your mother doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. In the next part, we will delve deeper into the pain that has been passed down through generations. The invisible wounds that have been inherited from our mothers, grandmothers, and beyond. We will explore how these patterns of pain can be broken and how we can free ourselves from the emotional burdens we've inherited. Let's move forward and discover breaking generational patterns and healing the past. Part 4. Breaking generational patterns and healing the past. The invisible legacy of pain. Do you ever feel like certain patterns in your life keep repeating? Like a cycle of pain that you can't escape, no matter how hard you try? If you take a closer look, you might realize that these patterns didn't begin with you. They were passed down from generation to generation, often without anyone noticing. Think about your mother, and her mother, and their mothers before them. How many of them carried unspoken grief? How many of them faced hardship, rejection, or trauma that shaped the way they interacted with the world? These invisible legacies, these hidden wounds, are passed down not through words, but through behaviors, attitudes, and the way we see ourselves and others. We often think of ourselves as individuals, completely separate from the generations before us. But the truth is, we are all part of a larger, ongoing story, a story that is written not just by us, but by our ancestors. These wounds and patterns do not end with us. They continue, often without our awareness, influencing how we live, how we love, and how we see the world. Do you ever feel like you're carrying someone else's burden? Maybe your mother's pain or even your grandmother's grief is sitting heavy on your shoulders, and you didn't even ask for it. These inherited wounds, often buried deep, are not just memories, they are part of your emotional DNA. And healing begins when we recognize them. Understanding the source of the cycle. Why do we often carry emotional burdens that don't seem to belong to us? Why do we repeat the same mistakes, even when we're trying to avoid them? The Zen teachings offer us a powerful insight. Everything belongs to a stream of causes. Nothing happens in isolation. Every action, every emotion, every struggle has a source. A root that often lies hidden in the past. When we begin to trace the roots of our own pain, we may uncover a story that spans generations. We might see that the anger we hold was not just something we learned from our mother, but from her mother as well. Perhaps the fear we carry was passed down from someone who was never able to face their own insecurities. This recognition is both powerful and liberating. It tells us that we are not trapped in our pain. We are simply carrying a legacy that can be changed. Consider the story of Mahatma Gandhi, who, like many others, inherited emotional pain from his ancestors. Growing up, he faced discrimination and injustice, yet he was determined not to pass on these wounds. Instead of allowing anger and resentment to shape his life, he chose compassion and nonviolence. Through this conscious decision, he not only healed himself, but also inspired others to break free from the chains of inherited pain. Can you choose to break that cycle in your own life? Can you recognize that the pain you carry is not your own, but part of a larger pattern that can be healed? Breaking the cycle of pain. Breaking generational patterns requires deep self-awareness and courage. It starts by recognizing that the pain we feel is not something to be carried indefinitely. We are not bound by our past unless we choose to remain there. This process isn't about blaming the previous generation. It's about understanding that their pain wasn't their fault either. Our ancestors did the best they could with the tools they had. But now, it's our turn to break free from the cycle. Think of the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr. He was born into a world filled with racial inequality and injustice, but he made a conscious decision to break the cycle of hate and violence. Through his leadership and message of peace, he became a powerful force for change, healing the wounds of the past and paving the way for a better future. In your own life, you can be the change. You can choose to heal the emotional wounds that have been passed down. You can choose to break the patterns of pain, fear, and anger that have shaped your family's history. It doesn't mean ignoring or denying the past. It means choosing a different way forward. The power of forgiveness in breaking the cycle. One of the most powerful tools for breaking generational patterns is forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing the wrongs of the past. It means letting go of the emotional burden that the past has placed on us. When we forgive, we release the hold that past pain has on us. We free ourselves from the cycle of resentment and allow ourselves to heal. Consider the life of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison for his fight against apartheid. When he was released, he didn't seek revenge. Instead, he chose forgiveness, understanding that holding on to anger would only continue the cycle of suffering. Mandela's forgiveness was not just for the oppressors, but for himself. It allowed him to heal and move forward with peace and dignity. In your own life, how can you use forgiveness to break free from inherited pain? What would happen if you forgave not just your mother but the generations before her as well? Could this be the key to healing the emotional wounds that have been passed down? Reclaiming your power and healing the past. Breaking generational patterns and healing the past is not easy. It requires courage, self-compassion, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truths of our history. But it also gives us the power to choose a different path. You have the power to rewrite your story. You are not defined by the pain you've inherited. By understanding and healing these wounds, you can reclaim your emotional freedom and create a new legacy for yourself and for future generations. As we continue on this journey of healing, we will explore the next step, healing from within, self-love and forgiveness. This next part will focus on how we can heal from the inside out by learning to love ourselves and forgive the past. Are you ready to take the next step? Part 5. Healing from within, self-love and forgiveness. The foundation of healing, self-love. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt that the person staring back at you wasn't truly you? Or perhaps you've wondered why it's so difficult to show yourself the same love and compassion that you freely give to others. The journey of healing begins within, with self-love. But self-love is not always as easy as it sounds. We are often taught to give love to others, to be kind and caring toward everyone around us, but we forget to direct that same kindness inward. When was the last time you truly showed yourself compassion? Do you criticize yourself for your mistakes? Do you feel unworthy of love or care? If you've struggled with these questions, you are not alone. Many of us carry self-doubt, guilt, and shame from our pasts, often from childhood, and sometimes from our relationships with our mothers. Self-love means accepting yourself, flaws and all. It means acknowledging your worth, regardless of past mistakes or perceived imperfections. It means being gentle with yourself when things go wrong, and not punishing yourself for things beyond your control. Without self-love, we cannot fully heal. And healing from the wounds caused by our relationships with our mothers requires that we first heal the relationship we have with ourselves. How to cultivate self-love. So how do we begin to cultivate self-love? It starts by practicing gentleness. Gentleness in the way you speak to yourself. Gentleness in the way you view your past. Gentleness in the way you handle your emotions. Take a moment to think. What would it look like to treat yourself the way you treat your best friend? If your friend came to you with pain, would you judge them? Would you criticize them for feeling hurt? Or would you offer a kind word, a listening ear, and the reassurance that they are loved exactly as they are? Now, apply that same thinking to yourself. When you feel pain, don't be quick to judge yourself. Instead, show yourself the same love and compassion that you would show someone you deeply care about. Forgiving yourself is part of this process, and once you begin to love yourself in this way, the healing will begin to unfold. Consider Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who has taught the world about mindfulness and compassion. He often spoke of loving ourselves as we are, without judgment. In his teachings, he reminds us that true love starts with self-love. Only when we love ourselves can we truly love others. The power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is another powerful tool in the healing process. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone off the hook for their wrongdoings. It doesn't mean excusing the hurt or pretending it didn't happen. Forgiveness means releasing the hold that anger, resentment, or pain has over you. It means freeing yourself from the chains of the past and allowing yourself to move forward with peace. Have you ever carried anger towards someone? Perhaps your mother? For years? Does it feel like the weight of that anger is affecting your every move? Forgiveness is not about saying that the pain was okay, but about giving up the power that the offense has over you. Think about Maya Angelou, the legendary poet and civil rights activist. She experienced deep trauma in her early life, including being sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend. For years, she struggled with feelings of anger and betrayal, but eventually, she chose forgiveness. Not for him, but for herself. Forgiveness allowed her to heal, and it gave her the power to create a life of compassion, wisdom, and grace. Forgiveness doesn't just benefit the person you forgive. It benefits you, the one who carries the pain. By forgiving, you release the emotional burden that weighs you down and make space for healing to occur. Self-forgiveness, the missing piece. When we think about forgiveness, we often think about forgiving others. But self-forgiveness is just as important. How many times have you blamed yourself for things that were beyond your control? How often have you felt that you were not good enough, or that you weren't worthy of love because of past mistakes? Forgiving yourself is one of the most profound ways to heal. It's about acknowledging that you did the best you could with the knowledge and resources you had at the time. You are not defined by your past mistakes. You are defined by the choices you make today and the choices you will make tomorrow. A beautiful example of self-forgiveness can be found in the life of Oprah Winfrey, a woman who overcame an incredibly painful childhood. Oprah was sexually abused by family members and faced severe hardship growing up, yet she never allowed those experiences to define her. She forgave herself for any perceived shortcomings and chose to live a life of service, wisdom, and love. You too can choose to forgive yourself. You can let go of the guilt, the shame, and the self-judgment that you carry. You can choose to start fresh and to move forward with a heart full of compassion for yourself. The liberation of self-love and forgiveness. When you practice self-love and forgiveness, something extraordinary happens. You are liberated from the weight of the past. You are no longer held hostage by the pain that once defined you. And with this freedom, you can move forward with a clear mind and an open heart. Remember, healing is not a one-time event, it's a process. It takes time, effort, and practice. But by embracing self-love and forgiveness, you give yourself the best chance to heal, to grow, and to find peace. What if you stopped blaming yourself for everything that went wrong? What if you embraced your imperfections and chose to love yourself anyway? Could this be the first step toward true freedom? In the next section, we will explore how to truly move forward in life by setting boundaries and creating a new, healthier relationship with your past. We will look at how you can continue healing, not just from the pain of your childhood, but from the emotional wounds that still affect you today. Let's move forward and explore creating healthy boundaries and moving forward. Part 6. Creating healthy boundaries and moving forward. The importance of boundaries. Do you feel like you're constantly giving to others, yet never receiving what you need in return? Or perhaps you've been in relationships, whether with your mother, partner, or friends, where your needs were ignored or your feelings dismissed. This is where the power of boundaries comes into play. Healthy boundaries are essential for our emotional well-being. They protect us from being overwhelmed by others' needs, while also ensuring that we don't lose sight of our own. But creating boundaries is not easy. For many of us, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. We worry about offending others or feeling guilty for asserting our needs. But the truth is, without boundaries, we cannot fully heal. Think about it. When we don't set boundaries, we allow others to dictate our emotional state. We let our past relationships, especially with our mothers, continue to shape us in ways that prevent us from living fully. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect and self-love. It's about recognizing that your feelings matter, your needs are valid, and your emotional health is worth protecting. How to set healthy boundaries. Have you ever found it difficult to say no? To turn down requests or set limits without feeling guilty? Setting boundaries requires practice, but it begins with the decision to protect your own well-being. Start by acknowledging what you need emotionally. What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel drained or overwhelmed? Once you understand these things, you can begin to set boundaries that help you protect your energy and your peace. Setting boundaries isn't just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. It's about choosing what you are willing to accept in your relationships and what you are not. This could mean distancing yourself from toxic people, communicating more openly with loved ones, or learning to prioritize your own needs. Think about Mahatma Gandhi again. He was a leader who understood the importance of boundaries. He was a man who fought for justice and peace, but also set boundaries in his own life to protect his sense of peace and integrity. He didn't allow the pressures of the world to define him. Instead, he stood firm in his beliefs, even when the world around him was in turmoil. What boundaries do you need to set in your life? How can you begin to say yes to yourself and no to the things that drain you? Moving forward, releasing the past. Once you've set boundaries, the next step is to move forward. It's time to release the past and stop letting it define who you are today. You've done the hard work of facing your emotional wounds, of understanding your mother's pain, of practicing self-love and forgiveness. Now it's time to let go of the emotional baggage that has held you back for so long. Releasing the past isn't about forgetting. It's about finding peace with it. It's about acknowledging the pain and choosing not to carry it any longer. It's about making a conscious decision to live in the present moment, without constantly being pulled back to old memories and hurts. When you release the past, you free yourself to live a life filled with possibility and joy. Oprah Winfrey is another example of someone who has released the past and moved forward. She faced unimaginable challenges in her youth, but she didn't let those challenges define her. She chose to release the hurt and transform it into something positive. Through forgiveness and healing, she has become a beacon of strength and empowerment for millions. Can you release the emotional burdens you've been carrying? Can you move forward with a heart open to new experiences and growth? The power of living in the present. Living in the present means fully embracing each moment without letting past pain dictate your actions or emotions. It means choosing to let go of regrets, guilt, and shame, and instead focusing on what you can create today. Living in the present allows you to experience life more fully without being bogged down by old wounds or the weight of the past. Think of Eckhart Tolle, who teaches about the power of living in the present. He often says, the past has no power over the present moment. When we choose to live in the here and now, we free ourselves from the emotional chains that bind us to the past. And it's in this freedom that true healing happens. What would your life look like if you chose to live in the present moment? What if you could release the weight of the past and fully embrace the opportunities before you? This is the power of moving forward, of creating a new life, starting today. Moving toward wholeness. As we wrap up this section, it's important to remember that healing is not about perfection, it's about wholeness. It's about acknowledging that we are all human, with our flaws, our pain, and our struggles, but also with our potential for growth and transformation. By setting healthy boundaries, releasing the past, and living in the present, we become whole. We are no longer defined by our wounds or our history. We are defined by the choices we make today. In the next section, we will tie everything together, reflecting on how these practices of self-love, forgiveness, and boundary setting can transform your life. We will explore how you can create a life of peace, joy, and freedom, no longer weighed down by the past, but empowered to move forward with confidence. Let's move forward and explore the final section, conclusion. Conclusion. We've walked through a journey together, haven't we? A journey of understanding, healing, and self-discovery. By now, you've learned how our relationship with our mothers deeply impacts our emotional well-being. You've seen how emotional wounds from the past, often hidden and unspoken, can affect us well into adulthood. But here's the most important message. Healing is possible. Healing starts with understanding. Understanding ourselves, understanding our mothers, and understanding the wounds that have been passed down through generations. It's about recognizing the pain, forgiving the past, and finally setting ourselves free. Do you remember the lessons we've learned? First, we explored the silent pain many of us carry, those deep emotional wounds tied to our relationships with our mothers. Then we moved forward, uncovering the truths about our mothers' pasts and how they shaped their actions. We've talked about breaking generational patterns, practicing self-love, and learning to forgive, not just others, but ourselves as well. As we reflect on this journey, think about how these lessons can change your life. What if you started to practice self-love every day? What if you set healthy boundaries, learn to forgive, and let go of the past? Could that bring you peace? Could that bring you the healing you've been seeking for so long? Now, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to you. Thank you for joining me on this path of reflection and growth. I am so thankful that you've taken the time to explore these ideas with me. By watching this video, you've already taken the first step toward healing. And for that, I truly commend you. But remember, healing is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong journey. And now, I encourage you to take these lessons and apply them in your daily life. Start small. Practice self-love, set boundaries, forgive yourself, and move forward with compassion. What's one thing you can do today to begin healing? How will you show yourself more love and compassion? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Feel free to share your reflections and how these teachings have impacted you. Your voice matters, and we can all learn from one another. Before we end, I want to remind you to subscribe to the Son.Mindfulness channel for more content like this. Your support means so much. By subscribing and continuing to watch, we can keep learning and growing together. I wish you all the best on your healing journey. May you always be healthy, peaceful, happy, and may good fortune follow you wherever you go. Thank you again for being here. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.